You never expect betrayal to come from the person who once braided your hair, who sang you lullabies when storms rattled the windows. But when it does, it cuts deeper than any stranger's knife, leaving scars that linger in the quiet moments. For me, that betrayal began in the place I called home, in a beige-painted house in Everbrook, a sleepy town nestled between rolling hills and forgotten highways. I was 24, fresh out of college, and back in my mother's house. Not out of laziness or failure, but because it made sense. Everbrook wasn't exactly a hub of opportunity, but it was familiar, a place where I could rebuild after the whirlwind of university. I worked as a freelance video editor and content creator, turning my childhood bedroom into a sanctuary of ambition. Blackout curtains blocked the world outside, my custom-built desk stood proudly in the corner, and shelves gleamed with equipment I'd saved for over years. Cameras, lights, a microphone that made my voice sound like it belonged somewhere bigger. I wasn't just living there, I was contributing. I paid rent, covered the electric bill, chipped in for groceries, and even paid for Mom's phone plan when her hours at the diner got cut. I wasn't a guest. I was a partner in keeping our chaotic little household afloat. The chaos came from my younger siblings, 16-year-old Emma and 14-year-old Lucas, still in high school, leaving trails of backpacks and half-eaten snacks. I didn't mind. I'd carved out my corner of calm, a space where I could edit late into the night, chasing deadlines and dreams. I was proud of what I'd built, piece by painstaking piece. Then Trish arrived. She was my mother's childhood friend, a ghost from summer picnics I barely remembered. Red lipstick, coconut sunscreen, a laugh that carried over backyard barbecues. Now, she stood on our doorstep, hollow-eyed, with two kids clinging to her like shadows. Lily, 9, and Max, 6, stared at the ground as Mom enveloped Trish in a hug, whispering words I couldn't catch. Trish had lost her job, her husband had left her in a storm of legal papers and cruelty, and she had nowhere else to go. Mom offered the guest room, and I nodded, thinking it was temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month. Just until she got back on her feet. But temporary has a way of sinking roots. It started small. Lily and Max were loud, their voices piercing through my noise-canceling headphones as I tried to work past midnight. Toys littered the hallway, creeping closer to my door each day. I'd come back from a coffee run to find my door ajar, my camera slightly tilted, as if curious fingers had brushed against it. I said nothing. Trish was struggling, I told myself. Be kind, be patient. But patience, when tested daily, becomes a heavy weight. Then came that Tuesday afternoon, a day that shattered my world. I'd been at a client meeting in a nearby town, pitching a video project that could have been my big break. I returned home, my head buzzing with ideas, only to find my door wide open. Children's laughter echoed down the hall, not the joyful kind, but the reckless, careless kind. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with a sickening dread. I stepped into my room, and it was no longer mine. Dolls and stuffed animals sprawled across my bed. My monitor was tilted at an odd angle, smudged with tiny fingerprints. My tripod lay toppled against the wall, my camera dangling precariously. Worst of all, my microphone, the one I'd saved nearly a year to buy, the one that made my work feel real, was on the floor, its stand bent. And there, at my desk, clicking through my project files like it was a game, was Max. I couldn't speak. My breath caught, and I stood frozen, the edges of my vision blurring. "Where's Mom?" I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. She came up the stairs, casual, as if the scene before me was nothing. "They needed more space," she said with a shrug that would haunt me for weeks. "Your room's the biggest, Maddie. It's just a room." Just a room? It was my studio, my livelihood, the one place where I felt like myself. And she'd handed it over without a word to me. I tried to explain, calmly at first. "This is my workspace, Mom. My equipment is expensive. I pay rent. I deserve a say." She waved me off. "You're being dramatic. Trish is going through a hard time. They're just kids. You're young. You'll adapt." Adapt? To having my life dismantled? To being erased from my own home? I was the selfish one now, apparently. My contributions, the bills, the groceries, the quiet support meant nothing. I was just Maddie, the moody daughter who should be grateful. That night, I retreated to the laundry nook, the only untouched corner of the house. I sat on the cold tile surrounded by detergent bottles, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at my chest. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just waited, hoping someone would see reason. The next morning I tried talking to Mom again. I'd rehearsed it all night, logical, calm, respectful. I explained the cost of my equipment, how my work wasn't a hobby, but a career. I reminded her I paid rent, that I'd earned a place in decisions about my space. "I'm not asking for much," I said. "Just respect." She looked at me like I was a stranger. This is my house, Madeline. I make the rules. Her house, as if my money didn't keep the lights on, as if my work was invisible. I suggested compromises, moving my equipment to the guest room, letting the kids have my bed but keeping my desk. She barely listened. There's no room, she said. Make do. Make do? On a couch? In a kitchen cluttered with crayons and cereal bowls? My work required focus, equipment, space, none of which I had anymore. Days blurred into a haze of frustration. I worked from cafes, burning through my savings on overpriced lattes just for Wi-Fi. My productivity tanked, deadlines slipped, clients sent concerned emails, and my confidence cracked. At home, things worsened. Mom avoided me. Trish treated me with exasperated pity, as if I were a petulant child. Her kids ruled my room, and I was told to knock before entering, what used to be my sanctuary. One night, when I tried to grab my headphones, Trish blocked the doorway. "Respect their boundaries," she said. Boundaries? I was a ghost in my own home, reduced to a wallet and a whisper. I started making lists. Pros and cons, finances, options. I could barely afford to move, but staying was suffocating me. I felt myself fading, the ambitious, creative Maddie dissolving into resentment and silence. Then I overheard them. Mom and Trish were in the kitchen, their voices low but sharp through the thin walls. "She's so dramatic," Trish said. 24 and still at home. She should be grateful. Mom laughed, a sound that pierced me. "She's always been moody, stubborn. She'll get over it." Grateful? For being displaced? For having my work sabotaged? For being dismissed at every turn? I didn't sleep that night. I sat up, calculating. Deposits, rent, utilities. It would be tight, but it would be mine. By morning, I was messaging landlords. 4 days later, I found a studio in Bridgehaven's downtown, an upstairs unit in an old house with chipped paint and rattling windows. It was small, bare, but quiet. Mine. When I signed the lease, my hands shook with adrenaline, not fear. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. I didn't tell Mom. I knew she'd wield guilt like a weapon. Instead, I called 2 friends, Sam, with his van, and Lila, who offered to film just in case. I hated that we needed proof, but I agreed. The night before, I packed in silence. Books, gear, clothes, the pieces of myself I'd once arranged with care, now boxed like relics of a lost life. At dawn, we arrived. Trish and her kids were in the kitchen. Mom was upstairs. I didn't explain. I went to my room, their room, and opened the door. It was worse than I'd imagined. Stickers on my desk, crayon marks on the walls, my mic stand bent, my headphones gone, my chair stained. I swallowed the urge to scream. "Start filming," I told Lila. Trish stormed upstairs. "You can't just barge in," she snapped. "This is their space now." "I'm taking my things," I said, not looking at her. She scoffed. "Overreacting doesn't suit you." I didn't answer. I had nothing left for her. We loaded the van, box by box. The house felt colder with each step. Mom appeared in the hallway, her face a mix of confusion and wounded pride. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Over what, Madeline?" "You're throwing away your home over a temporary situation?" I met her gaze. "I'm reclaiming what you took. Peace, space, respect." Her face hardened. "I need your rent money." "Then ask Trish," I said. "Or her husband, or the court. Not me." The silence was deafening. In the driveway, I looked at the house one last time. It seemed smaller, faded, like a memory losing its color. That night in my new studio, I slept on a mattress surrounded by boxes, no curtains on the windows. And yet I slept deeply, wrapped in silence and freedom. The messages started the next day. Mom's texts were a storm of anger and guilt, accusations of abandoning the family, demands for rent, claims I was cruel. I didn't respond. Days later, Emma called. "Why?" she asked, her voice soft. "Because I was invisible," I said. "Because staying would have broken me," she sighed. "I miss you." "I miss you too," I said. But missing someone isn't a reason to shrink yourself. Weeks passed. My work revived. Clients returned. I started cooking, walking, breathing without tension. Then a message came from a distant cousin. "Saw your mom's post. You okay?" "Post?" He sent a screenshot, a long public Facebook rant. Mom painted herself as a victim, a struggling single parent abandoned by her ungrateful daughter. No mention of Trish, the room, or the choices that drove me away. Just blame, laid bare for likes and pity. Rage flared, then faded. Let her have her story. I had mine, and it lived in the quiet of my new home, in the space I'd claimed. Months later, I stood in my studio, now alive with new shelves, a rug, and plants in the window. My work thrived. I thrived. The beige house was the distant memory, a lesson in what I'd never accept again. Betrayal cuts deep, but so does freedom, and freedom once claimed is worth every scar.